See him a beast when you hear that sound like yeah, beat on the beat when you hear that sound like woo. Yeah, bitch and the champ only need one round like yeah, me, I'm a G-Ring, he in the sound like
Mike Owens here. Today I'm joined by Nathan Fletcher, who returns to action. Cage Warriors 160, Manchester, facing Bryan. Nath, always a pleasure, my man. How are things with you today?
I'm very good, mate. Yeah, very good. Had a standard day of training on a bank holiday. Us fighters don't get bank holidays off, so especially when we're in fight camp anyway. So I've had a good hard day of training to start the week. I'm happy to be talking to you, Mike. It's been a while since we last did one of these, so thanks for getting me back on, mate.
No, the pleasure's all mine. I think the last time we spoke would have been when you were out of action, actually, before Luke and Adam's fights at the last, well, not the last Cage Warriors Manchester, but the Cage Warriors Manchester back in November. So,
Yeah.
How has that period been since we last spoke? Obviously, you had a couple of fights, but how's life in the world of Nathan Fletcher?
A lot better than it was when I spoke to you at that point.
Yeah,
so obviously, then I was coming off just over a year out the cage, sitting on a loss from my title fight back in 2021. So fast forwarded nearly 2 years from that point now. I've been back in the cage only twice. I would have liked to have fought a couple more times than that. But obviously external circumstances get in the way sometimes. But the way things are going at the minute, I'm very happy. I fought New Year's Eve, got a win there. Wasn't happy with my performance, but the main thing was I got the win, got back in the cage. Then in April, obviously, got a first round finish, back to standard Nathan Fletcher ways, getting the job done nice and early. And then here we are now in September. I got another fight, another hometown show on the Manchester card. So I'm in good spirits. I'm very happy with the way things are going now.
Well, it's not a hometown show, but it's close enough that we'll call it hometown, given the other options. But obviously, you made your return to Manchester back in April. Just that overall experience, then obviously going into another one. What was that overall experience like, and how much anticipation have you got for your return?
Yeah, I love the Manchester shows. Like you say, it's not quite Liverpool, it's not quite the Echo, but for the way the calendar's working out at the minute, Manchester kind of becomes like the next generation show. And me being from Southport, which is not too far from Manchester, I tend to do pretty well on the tickets, get a good crowd down to the Manchester event. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to fighting in front of all my friends and family again. And yeah, I just like the easiness of the Manchester cards. I can sleep in my own bed the night before the fight. It's a 45-minute, an hour drive down the motorway to Manchester, get the job done, and then I'm back home within an hour after the fight, chilling with my feet on the couch. So I'm very, very excited for this one. I've got a good game opponent and a good few weeks out as well, so I'm not waiting for someone last minute like it's been the case the last few times. So yeah, like I say, the way things are going right now, I'm very, 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 very happy.
Just before we talk about your opponent, obviously there's no massive Manchester star at the moment. So do you think there's a particular reason Cage Warriors are favouring bowlers down in Manchester rather than a alternative in kind of Liverpool area? Because as you mentioned, it's very, very much the next gen takeover every time Cage Warriors hits Manchester.
I think the way, probably from a business standpoint, to be honest, is boring as it sounds, but we all do well selling tickets for it. So there's no real what's the word I'm looking for? There's no real incentive for them to move to Liverpool because we still pack out the bowlers, and I imagine it's probably cheaper than booking out the Echo Arena or similar venues around there. So I think it's just more of like a business standpoint. It's probably better for them financially putting it in Manchester because they still get all the Scouse fighters over on the card selling a lot of tickets. So yeah, I just think it's that really. Obviously, I'd prefer it if they put it in Liverpool. That would be even better. But I'll take what I can get. So Manchester's not too bad.
Well, if we do make the return to Liverpool, we'll probably need someone to get a title fight on the main event of that bill. And speaking of title fight, you're obviously not a million miles away with this next one that we've got. We've obviously got Bryan coming up at the end of next month. Just give me your overall scouting report on your next opponent. What have you seen and what potential areas you think you can exploit?
Yeah, so he's an interesting one. He's got a good record. He's 5-1. I had a look on his Instagram. He thinks he's 6-1, but Tapology seems to think he's 5-1. So I imagine that one of those fights probably took place in a gym or something, and it's not been counted on his record. There's not a great deal on him. He's been fighting on his home shows in Brazil. So Predator FC, Shuto FC. He's fought on a couple of these shows. What I've heard of, I think Predator FC is Shooter Box's gym's show. So that's the gym he trains out of. That's the show of his gym.
Right, okay.
And he's run that. So when that's happening, you can't really take too much from those fights because he's probably getting guys brought in for him to beat up, do you know what I mean, and add to his record. In terms of his skill set, he looks pretty well-rounded from the small few clips that I've seen of him. He's aggressive. He likes punching people and getting punched himself. So I don't know whether that'll favour him too well, fighting someone as technical as me. If he's trying to make it a brawl, I feel like I'm just going to absolutely outclass him and look for the counters. And obviously my game, which is the takedowns, which I think he leaves himself quite wide open to. So in terms of like stylistically, I think I match up very well with people like him who are aggressive, brawler, you know, less technical. So that's my opinion on him. Obviously, I think I'm ready for anyone in the world now. I believe I am at world level, and it's showing it because Cage Warriors are having to draft in guys from shooter box, you know what I mean, from Brazil to come and fight me because I've wiped out majority of the European talent. So I'm happy to get to test myself on more of a world level, we're saying this one. And like I say, main thing is good opponent, winning record. So I'm just keeping that going on. All my opponents from start of my career to now have been winning records. So I'm not taking a step away from that and keeping the tough competition to prepare me for the eventual UFC career that I go on to have.
Of course, and obviously the biggest difference about this fight, Neith, is you've actually got an opponent to prepare for. Now, obviously, it's difficult in finding tape with the I'm sure it might be difficult, as you mentioned there, trying to find that info. But is it what can be said about the fact that you've struggled to find opponents? Because there's a lot of names in the bantamweight division. There's a lot of names across Europe who could potentially sign for Cage Warriors, and you struggle to get matched up. What can actually be said about the fact that a lot of people maybe don't want the Nathan Fletcher experience, let's say?
I like that, the Nathan Fletcher experience. But I think it speaks for itself. Do you know what I mean? People see me fight. People see the guys that I've beat, the guys that I've got on my record, the amount of finishes I've got. I've been in Cage Warriors since the start of my career, and every time I've taken a step up and I've fought former champions, I've fought European prospects, I've fought the best of the best. I've had UFC veterans pull out from fights on me. Do you know what I mean? So I think people are very aware that I'm sort of the next big thing to come out of this European scene, especially in the bantamweight division. And I've had a lot of people ducking me. It's no secret. That's why they're having to go to the back end of Brazil and the shooter box game to bring someone over for me. But in my opinion, I've always had it in my head that I'm going to be in the UFC. I want to be one of the best fighters in the world. That is my goal. My dream in life is to be a pound for pound #1, a UFC world champion. So no matter what name I get handed to me, even if I think it's a tough fight or it's stylistically maybe doesn't favour me, I'm thinking if I want to be the best in the world, I've got to walk through these guys. Do you know what I mean? I can't be thinking, ooh, maybe I'll dodge that fight and try and get a bit of an easier run to get to the UFC. But what kind of mindset's that? How's that going to serve you when you get to the UFC? And they go, here's this fella, Magomed or whatever, from the back in the Russia. He's been wrestling since
I think he's a real person, actually, Nate.
Well, there you go. See what I mean? So when they offer me him, I've got to be confident and I've got to be mentally ready to think I've had all these other tough tests. I've seen these sort of styles in my regional career. So I'm prepared now for that. Whereas if I just think, Ian, Ian D, maybe you can sort me a few bums and pad me record a little bit and get me to move on to the UFC and get there. And Magomed's waiting for me. And I'm thinking, shit, I've not fought anyone anywhere near his level. Do you know what I mean? So that's the way I see it. I'm taking tough fights now to prepare me because I genuinely believe that I'm going to be at the top of the sport one day. So I want to prepare myself for when that day comes. So I'm ready for it.
Yeah, no, 100%. And probably the politest call out of Magomed. We'll have to make sure that keep an eye on Instagram and see if you get a DM from him saying he's waiting for the contract.
Is he about to wait?
I believe there is Magomedov who fights in Bellator. I think he just had a loss to Patchy Mix, if memory serves. So there is someone. So you've actually made a call out without making a call out there, which I like.
Well, I'm coming for you, Magomed, mate. So be ready.
I love it. Obviously, going into this fight, Nath, the intention is to obviously get back on that 3-fight winning streak, kind of reassert yourself at the top of this division. When we've seen the likes of Oban and we've seen get the UFC contract last week, we've seen the likes of Justin Burlington up in a couple of weeks. Do you still have interest in the Cage Warriors title, or do you feel like is it a Dana White Contender Series shot that you're looking for?
I think I'd take either or, to be honest. I think the Cage Warriors title has always been a sort of goal of mine because I felt like that was the stepping stone I'd need to progress onto the UFC. Now, obviously, the ultimate goal is to be the UFC world champion. So I feel like if the route was maybe through the Contender Series, that still means I can get towards the UFC and work towards my eventual goal. I would definitely take that, yeah. So I'm just going to have to wait and see whatever gets offered to me. Obviously, I've got a tough opponent in front of me now in September. My main focus is getting the win there, going to 9-1. I'll be on a 3-fight win streak. Hopefully add another finish to my record. and it's just making me more and more desirable to get signed by the UFC. That's my goal. Do you know what I mean? Put on good performances, be an exciting fighter, sell a lot of tickets, build hype around me, and then whether they want me to fight for the Cage Warriors title after this, I will gladly do that, or whether they want me to go through the Contender Series, or whether the UFC just come and say, here's a late notice opportunity for you. Do you know what I mean? You're a bit of a standout on your regional circuit. We want to sign you up for the short notice fight. Whatever option sort of lends itself to me, I'll take with both hands.
I was going to ask you about that because obviously UFC Paris, we've got Reece McEwan going back to the UFC. We've got Sharia making his long anticipated French UFC debut. We've got Kaylan Loughran obviously making his UFC debut. And then we have the most defending current UFC Cage Warriors champion in George Hardwick on the Contender Series, alongside non-champions Oban Elliott and Justin Burlinson. So what do you just want to get your overall opinion on the UFC signings from Cage Warriors and also the Dana White Contender Series hopefuls, if you like? What have you made of who's been signed and who's been given those Contender Series shots?
I think it's interesting. So, like, for example, someone like Oban, I think, is perfect for the Contender Series. Do you know what I mean? He's got the personality. He was on a win streak, but maybe, I don't know, his division, how it was playing out. Reece McEwan had the title. There was fights lined up. So I think like the opportunity for Oban to go sort of around in the back door through the Contender Series was perfect. And I think he made the most of that opportunity. Obviously, you've seen he's been signed now. So I made up for Oban with that. And then George Hardwick's a mad one. I really felt he had three. They have two defenses or three defenses?
Three defenses, I believe.
Do you know what I mean? That's almost offensive that they would put him on the Contender Series over just straight signing him there. But then saying that, obviously he didn't even. I thought it was a given that George was going to get the contract. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
and then he's actually going a long way around anyway. And then that kid he thought looked like a world beater, to be honest. So I think it's just one of those things where there is a little bit of luck involved in this game. If you look at, like, say for example, Kaylan Loughran, right, his route to the UFC compared to, I would say, like, Reece has earned it. Reece come out of the UFC, and if you look at who he fought in the UFC, Kamzat and then Alex Morono, who was a ranked well, and then he gets caught, and then he has 3 finishes. Do you know what I mean? 2 of them title, and then he gets back to the UFC. That makes sense. And then Kaylan's just kind of come through out of nowhere, had the right fights at the right time, and got signed. So there's definitely an element of luck in this game. Do you know what I mean? And being in the right place at the right time. And for whatever reason, George Hardwick didn't get that look, but I felt like he maybe deserved the contract. I'm surprised we didn't see him on UFC London in July. Do you know what I mean? So, but that's it. That's just the way the cookie crumbles, isn't it, Mike? Do you know what I mean?
You mentioned your old amateur opponent there on the regional scene, Kaylan Loughran. Just your overall opinion to his specific signing, and also how far you think Kaylan will go in the UFC ranks.
I'm happy for him. Do you know what I mean? He's got to the UFC. He's made it to the big league. So we'll see. Obviously, I don't rate him very highly. That's no secret. Do you know what I mean? I think I'm 10 times better than him. So we'll see how he gets on. I don't know anything about his opponent in this UFC Paris card, but I don't see him being like one of the top contenders in the bantamweight division at all. But you maybe just call me a hater. I don't know. But that's my opinion on him. Do you know what I mean? So we'll see. Hopefully, I meet him down the line in the UFC. If he's still knocking about by the time I get there, I'll happily smash his head in the UFC. But I'm happy for him. I'm happy that he's got there, but I don't see him getting too far, to be honest.
Yeah, I love it. Obviously, we talk about Kaylan being the former bantamweight champion. The bantamweight title is now vacant. There's been a lot of chatter online about Reece McEwan potentially headlining in Newcastle. Seems like the perfect, one half of the perfect dance partner for that bantamweight title. Just your overall opinion on if you get past this opponent in September, if that November could be a suitable turnaround, and if that bantamweight title is of interest to you.
Yeah, there was a bit of talk back and forth before this fight got signed about me fighting Reece for the belt. Do you know what I mean? So
Reece McEwan, I said Reece McEwan, I meant Reece McEwan.
Reece McEwan, that's the one, yeah. I didn't want to wait till November to fight. Do you know what I mean? Like, I've been fresh, no injuries since my last fight in April, where I went in and didn't get a glove laid on me. So I come out the cage and I was ready to go all throughout summer. I've been training. I had a week holiday after that fight, and I've been training pretty much non-stop from that point. So when they announced the Manchester card in September, like I said, I like fighting there. It's close to home, the home crowd advantage, whatever you want to say. That there are a lot of tickets to sell. There was a lot of factors that made me want to get a fight then, and it was this first card that I could get on. Do you know what I mean? So that being said, there is obviously 8 weeks in between September and the Newcastle card, so we'll see what happens. I've got Thomas Bryan. I don't ever want to look past anyone and say you're going to smash. Go on to that. So I've got a very tough opponent in front of me. But yeah, everything goes well. I wouldn't be too surprised if you saw me headlining that Newcastle card as well after this one. So
and I guess with that said, over the last 6 months, has there been any specific changes that you've made to preparation or to training, like whether that be bringing a new aspect of training in, changing something up in the current gym? Is anything that you've changed, or any new kind of wrinkles that you've added to prep?
Yeah, I wouldn't say anything's changed massively. Just we're very consistent. I'm in the gym literally 6 days a week, every week, non-stop. And I feel like our team is always developing and leveling up our systems. So maybe in the coaching, the way we do things is changing a little bit all the time, because we're trying to stay up to date with like the most recent techniques, the most common finishing sequences. We're trying to stay on top of every UFC card. Our coaches watch all the cards. I watch all the cards, and we're picking up on little techniques and things and adding them in where we can. In terms of what have changed, I'm doing a little bit more striking training with Jack Kennedy, who's a guy from Southport, who's quite a high-level Muay Thai fighter. He's just fought over in Thailand. He's got 2 wins back-to-back in the last few weeks fighting over there. So I've been adding that in a little bit more, which is something I haven't done in the past. But other than that, I'm still working with Chris, my boxing coach, still working with Ellis, Paul, and Adam in Next Gen. So things have just been consistently improving since the last fight. But no real massive change-ups.
100%. Well, one last question from me, Nathan. You can take this question as brief or as detailed as you like. But what I'd like you to do is give me a walkthrough of the perfect fight day. So what happens when you wake up in the morning on Saturday, the 29th of September, to when you go to sleep in the evening?
I like it. It's a good question. So with this one, it's a little bit different, close to home. So there's I sometimes like going on the road and fighting and staying in a hotel, but there's also something nice about staying in your bed the night before. It's very similar to a sparring day. I can emulate fight day in my training camp every Thursday when I do my cage rounds. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So typical fight day is going to look like wake up, get a nice big breakfast in me, enjoy my coffee, go outside, get some sunshine. Hopefully it's September, so we'll see if the weather's all right. But get a nice walk in, get a bit of fresh air, just on my own, no headphones, nobody with me, just getting in the right mindset, ready to go and compete. I'll come home, eat a little bit more food, put some fights on, put some of my previous fights on from the comfort of my own lounge. So that'll be nice. I can just sit there in a hotel room. And then when the time's right to go down to the venue, I think nowadays we've been doing the medicals at the weigh-ins. So you don't actually have to, I'll be on the main card probably, which means I won't have to get to the venue till a little bit later on. So that'll be nice. So I'll be able to just chill out all day in my house with the fights on, get myself ready to compete, get down to the venue, headphones go on, get in the back, get in my zone, control me breathing, get focused. I like to warm up for about 30 minutes, nothing crazy, break a little sweat, get nice and loose. And then I'm going to make that walk. I'm going to high five everyone as I'm walking down, because I'm going to be, like I said, in Manchester, home crowd show, get in that cage, get a first round rear naked choke or a first round knockout, either or. I'll take either or. Get on top of the cage, see all my mates cheering, all the fans screaming, be made up, and then get out the cage, drive home, maybe stop at McDonald's on the way home, get a nice little scran, enjoy a bit of a cheap meal, and then again, back in mind, feet up on the couch. Probably if there's a UFC on that night, or probably watch more fights. I'm obsessed with it, so that's pretty much what I'll do. But that's a standard. That's exactly what happened in April when I fought in Manchester. That was pretty much the exact run through. Obviously, it was a triangle choke, but be the exact same again. Rinse and repeat.
Just before we finish, I want to pick up on the fact that you watch yourself fight before fight day. I find that really interesting, because some fighters I speak to don't even want to think about the fight until it's time to lock in. What is the specific reason or the specific advantage that you feel that you have watching tape of yourself? Because I would imagine that almost adds a little bit more pressure, given you getting in that zone a little bit earlier than perhaps some others would prefer.
Yeah, I don't know. I always watch my fights back. Do you know what I mean? I think for me, obviously a lot about the mental side of thing, about mental training. I like to see myself as a winner, and on YouTube, nice library of me being a winner. Do you know what I mean? So I think that really helps. I don't think it adds any pressure to me. I think it just reaffirms the message in my head. Look how many times you've done this. Every time you get in there, the same thing happens. You know what I mean? You go in there, take people out. I like to see myself in the cage, and I can feel how I feel in that moment. And I know that the thoughts that are going through my head, what I'm speaking to myself, what I'm saying to myself. And that just sort of reaffirms the idea that in my head already that I am a winner, and I'm going to go in and do the exact same thing tonight. So always do that.
I love it. Nath, it's great to see you back in action. Thank you as always for the time. I wish you the best of luck for Fight Night, and if I don't speak before, then I look forward to seeing you hopefully in the building on Manchester at the end of next month.
Brilliant, Mike. Thank you very much for having me on, mate. Always enjoy speaking to you. Nice one, brother.